Welcome to the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad. It's episode 500 marked on here, and I just screwed up the intro. Good stuff. Still figuring this whole thing out. We're going to talk about macro meals, easy ones that cyclists should know about. We're also going to talk about staying fit, like in your 30s and beyond, and how things change a bit. We have Alex Larson from Alex Larson Nutrition with us, registered dietitian. Great guest. It's Halloween too. Lots of good stuff to cover. The first thing, though, this is episode 500 by the numbers on here, but it actually isn't episode 500. It's episode 537 because we didn't always number our episodes back in the day. And with that, I just want to take a little bit of a moment to talk about this podcast. It's been going for 9.5 years now, Nate, which is pretty crazy to think about.
That's a long time.
That's a long time. Over 50 million plays. When you look at podcasts and YouTube and you bring it together, it's hard to get the exact number because there's some overlap there. But it's fair to say that 50 million is definitely at least the floor that we're at. And here's the crazy thing. If you factor in the average listen time that we have to our podcast, it's over 3,900 years of listening to this podcast that has happened by humans on this earth.
People must hear you in their sleep. Like Charles voice. And that laugh.
I know, I apologize for that. If you listen to every episode nonstop, it would take you 5 weeks. And the most popular episodes, we're going to go through this. Most popular one, when you look at YouTube and our podcast combined, it's How to Become a Faster Mountain Biker with Lee McCormick. That one with the video and the podcast, that one has performed the best. Then special guest Justin Williams, and we had Justin on. And then Strength Training for Cyclists, Ultimate Guide with Derek Thiel. Those are the 3 most popular podcasts. The topics that all of you like the most have to deal with weight management and overtraining. Those are the ones that hit the most, which as a cyclist, that also sounds exactly like the mistakes I make the most too.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
Yeah, it makes sense. Pretty wild, eh, Nate? Over 50 million downloads.
Yeah, that is a lot. I don't even know what to say about that. That's just a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty great. Thanks everybody for joining us on this whole journey. Great stuff. Alex, talking to you. If people have followed you on Instagram, you've gotten back into training. You're on TrainerRoad. You're you've got a trainer. You've got everything again.
Well, yeah. I just started on TrainerRoad like a week ago because it took a couple weeks for my smart trainer to come, and then it took me a little while to figure out how to get that thing set up. It was a little daunting. I was fortunate enough that my husband has lots of tools available and was able to navigate that. But I've got a couple rides in so far. I'm starting at the bottom of the barrel in terms of fitness, but it's good. I'm really excited just to see how the progress I can make over the winter. My motivation is pretty high right now. I've got some things that I want to do next spring, next summer, and I got to get there. I got to put in the work.
Alex, the crazy thing is that your fitness can always go lower. There's no block.
Well, trust me. I like with being pregnant with that third baby and then taking 10 months off. There was a big long stretch there where I was not doing much. So yeah, that is very true. And so I'm just looking forward to getting back into shape and feeling strong again. And honestly, with 3 kids, any time that I can get on the trainer or go out for a run, it's like my me time. It's just it's nice to have something to do for myself. Because I feel like any other time I'm constantly doing something for someone else.
Yeah, super important to have. What motivated you to do this? Was it are you training for an event? You've done half Ironmans before.
Yeah, I've done. I formerly did a lot of triathlons before kids, but I'm just not in the space to train for 3 sports at once. It would be a really big pain to try and get to the pool, and so running's easy. I've got a really nice group of other moms that I go run with, and that also is like therapy in itself. But I've been wanting to get back to riding. But I don't know. The roads these days just seem a little bit more scary. And so I wanted to get a little bit more on the dirt roads, something more quieter roads. And this gravel riding it was just calling my name. It's grown so much in popularity since I've been actually consistently riding. It's been a few years. And so, yeah, I got myself a gravel bike. I'm going to go to Oregon in April for special blend camp, a little gravel camp for 3 days of riding with Serena Bishop Gordon and her crew, and get some instruction. I'll talk about nutrition there, and it's just gonna be a really nice little retreat for me to get away. And I've never been to Oregon, so I'm really excited to do that.
That's awesome. On the note of like the safer roads and everything else, I absolutely agree. Like indoor training is becoming so much more popular year round for people for that very reason. Like it's just, yeah, it's complicated with phones. Really, that's the main thing. Like where I currently live, I'm pretty fortunate to have like a loop. Nate knows about it, the Franktown loop, that has relatively like very low traffic on
2
it.
cars.
Big shoulders, and it's nice to be able to have that. If I didn't have that, I think that almost all of my training would be inside. Like it's just I hardly ever ride to where things are busy, and it's just becoming more and more common. And we see, I mean, the world's best athletes even in triathlon and in everything else, that they use indoor training so heavily. It's just becoming so much more common. Which trainer did you get? I want to talk about the equipment side of things. Which bike did you get? Which trainer did you get? Because Nate, we've been talking about this with you too recently, about like you kind of want to like get a new setup and everything else. And I want to talk a bit about the equipment side of things because it's the season for it. Lots of people are getting stuff.
Yeah, the bike I got was a Cervelo Aspero, the 820, and
that's a nice bike.
Yeah,
gravel
it's
bike.
a very nice gravel bike. I kind of reached out to you, and you've been so gracious to answer some of my questions because I don't know anything. It's been so long since I've looked at any of like the equipment side of things. And so, and I said, hey, what do you think of the Aspero? And you said that it rides similar to a road bike, which coming from, triathlon road biking, that's kind of what I wanted. I don't really have an interest or like the guts to do mountain biking. So, the couple times that I've been out on it, it definitely has a nice road bike feel. It's a quick bike. Like it's sweet. And then I got the Garmin, Neo T2 for a trainer, and so far it's really comfortable. Keep in mind that the trainer that I had years ago was like a circa 2009 like Cyclists, like loud as I'll get up. Like,
was it one of the fan ones?
I don't know if it was a fan, but it was so loud. It was so noisy. It was not great to ride. I hated it. So this is like a huge step up, and I'm like, this is great. Like I love riding it. And I did set a rule for myself where if I wanted to watch like Netflix or anything, I got to be either weightlifting or on the trainer. So that's my little rule I set for myself.
Nice. That's the one perk of those old wind trainers, Nate, is that they produced quite a lot of draft. It's like a fan and a trainer all in one.
No, I was just thinking about that. I was thinking maybe you had the jet fluid too, but like remember how there used to be water or fluid inside it and it would spin and it would get heat up and it would change the resistance curve? Those are the old days.
That was a big problem we faced because people were like, my power isn't accurate when I start versus when I'm doing it later, when they used virtual power back in the day.
Depend on the trainer and then on the fluid and how viscous it would be at different temperatures, and we had to try to account for that. Yeah, that was annoying.
It's all changed so much.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy to think of now.
There's probably,
what are you thinking of getting, Nate? Like to have like an indoor setup?
I already have it all set up here. I kind of wish I had a different setup, but I don't really want to tell. I don't know.
Yeah. You don't have to. Yeah. Yeah. It's I still use the Elite Nero rollers. There's an issue with the erg mode on them, I think, like on their end, on the firmware side. But I think it's like me and like one other person in the whole world that uses those, like with TrainerRoad. So it doesn't like, I can't tell our engineers like, hey, solve my personal problems here. But I use it in resistance mode 99% of the time anyway. I like that way better.
Shift.
Yeah. And it's, man, they're smooth. They're so great. They're really good rollers. They're super quiet. They're not like the steel drum ones. They aren't like also I have another set of Elite called the Quick Motion, and those ones have like a clicking noise constantly because of magnets in there. And they kind of like, I don't think they're fully locked in. So every rotation, the magnet kind of like shifts around in some sort of plastic housing and it makes some noise. These ones are just perfectly silent. It's really cool. I still use those. I use my road bike and, man, I absolutely love it. I have a trainer desk, and I actually think I'm going to consider getting rid of it and have like a wall-mounted desk in front of me. That way I can get even more airflow to me. It works really well that way. So, and then, yeah, for training and entertainment, for people that don't know, TrainerRoad app, It's AI cycling software, makes you faster, tells you everything you need to know to get faster. You can go and try it. You can do this really cool thing. You can have it on the app on your computer or your phone. And if you're on the computer, you can pin it to the bottom of the screen. And right now I'm like binging Breakpoint. If anybody's seen that show on Netflix, it's like Drive to Survive, but for tennis. It's fascinating.
I don't know any of those. Drive to Survive? That sounds like
you don't know Drive to Survive either?
No.
Comment in the comments down below if you can't believe that Nate doesn't know what Drive to Survive is.
You know what that is, Alex?
I've seen it on there. I haven't watched it. I'm watching Nobody Wants This, which is a rom-com chick flick. So to the women out there that are listening, I highly recommend it. It's hilarious.
That's the best part. You can watch whatever you want, and there's this horizontal mode. It's in the bottom. It's these little like arrows that you click, and boom, it pins it to the bottom of the screen. So then you can watch whatever you want to watch and then train however you want. Or you can bring in whatever else you want to do while you're training for entertainment. That's how we've designed TrainerRoad, so that you can get the best training you need that makes you faster, and you can just bring whatever entertainment. So if you're listening to this and you haven't tried it yet, go to TrainerRoad.com, sign up for it. It'll make you faster. It's pretty great. Alex, I guess the other thing, do you have any events that you want to do?
I'll probably stay local this year just to like get my feet wet in some gravel racing. It was funny when I kind of made the decision. I'm like, hey, I'm going to try gravel riding. I'm going to get a bike. And then it took me about 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden I had this epiphany where I was like, oh, I can draft in gravel racing. Like I've done triathlon for so long. I was just like, you try so hard not to draft in triathlon. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to learn how like strategy and like when to attack. And so I'm like starting from like knowing nothing. So I need a little practice. So there's some local races around here. Like we have the Heck of the North here in Minnesota. And then the Birkebeiner hosts a gravel and mountain bike race, I think in early June. And then I have a former client of ours who him and his wife both have worked with us at Alex Larson Nutrition. They live in Grand Forks, and they were telling me about the Nepomuk Gnarly. Have you heard of this race?
Never heard of it. No.
No. It's in the middle of nowhere in North Dakota. Like I think the town's called Pisek or something like that. It's like 86 people live there. It's so small. And they host this gravel race in July, and it's got a very large purse, so it pulls actually quite a few like pro cyclists.
Really?
And so I might actually go out there and do like the 40 miler. They have 100 and
go pro for the weekend.
No, I'm not gonna go pro, but like they get I think the 100 miler, they get a pretty big field, pretty deep field, just because of the prize money. You should look it up. Like the whole town gets into it. They have like food trucks and a fireworks show and a petting zoo and bounce houses, and it just looks like a good time in just this little tiny town of North Dakota. So I might be out there.
So what's been most difficult about getting started with training again? This is relatable for a lot of people, even just coming out of the off season right now.
Yeah.
So like, what has been the most difficult thing for you?
There's moments where I feel like I'm drowning a little in just like trying to get everything done, where I'll have like an hour of time in my schedule where I'm like, okay, what do I do right now? Do I go through some of my to-do lists for work? Do I get a workout in? Do I go for like get some strength training done? Do I hop on the bike? Do I fold the laundry that's been sitting in the laundry basket for the past week? Do I take a nap? Because I could really use a nap. You know, like I there's like a million different things that I could do just with like that little like bit of time that I might have available. And so just that decision making can kind of feel overwhelming. And I have to remind myself, Alex, you can have it all. You just can't have it all at once. And so I have to kind of prioritize, just take it week by week. Some weeks I can get everything that I need to done, and other weeks I don't. And sometimes I really need to ask for help, whether it's from like my parents to take the kids or my husband being like, hey, can you just be a little bit more aware of like what's going around the house and kind of help out? So yeah, it's a balancing act, trying to get everything done between like running a business and getting in workouts and taking care of my kids. But we're making it work. It's going okay.
When are you getting your workouts in? like in the day? Do you have a time that it works best?
Yeah,
Thinking of
it's
somebody listening
kind
to this
of
and trying
all
to
over
find.
right now. I mean, I do work from home, so I do have the luxury of like during the day, especially because my preschooler is home in the afternoons every day with me now. So it's not like I can just sit on my computer all day long. So sometimes I'm like, hey, mom's going to hop on the bike, or I'm going to do some strength training here to come downstairs and play while I'm there. And so he won't be like, don't have to use like a screen to keep him entertained. He can just play while like honestly, I'll be riding the bike and he'll be shooting me with Nerf darts and thinks it's the funniest thing in the world. And I don't care. I'm just like, whatever, you're entertained. I'm getting my workout in. And I like, he'll like hit me like in the side. I'm like, oh, I'm bleeding, and like he thinks it's great and I'm getting, things done.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Nate, when?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Wait, no.
Go ahead, Nate.
Alex said this before about drafting and going from triathlon into drafting, and I had I had that same kind of like evolution, and I wanted to give some things that helped me with drafting. And Alex, you may not need these, but just for general audience, some people might need them. Good, cool.
Yeah, let's do it. That's great.
Okay, so
fantastic.
Alex, how much experience do you have with drafting?
A little bit. I've done some like group road riding, like charity rides where I was in like a pretty long drafting line and I was like, oh my gosh, I am like cruising here and I feel like I'm hardly even working. And so, and like there is a variety of people there. So I would find like a really big guy and I would just sit my butt right behind him and draft as much as possible. So I have some experience, but nothing in terms of like a race setting.
So that's a good point. Is the first one is like the size and how the rider is sitting on the bike will impact your draft. And when I started drafting, I always drafted right behind someone, and I just thought that was the best place to be, was directly behind them always, because we're going forward. And then actually a pro told me, no, you like when you get there, kind of go from side to side and wait until you feel the very best draft, because there could be crosswinds and stuff like that. And even how the rider's sitting, you'll get a better draft kind of being off to the edge sometimes. And you can really feel it in a big crosswind, but even small stuff, it's really cool to do that. And the other one is I would be oftentimes too close and too reactive, too close to the front wheel and then too reactive to changes, because I wanted to get the best draft possible. I didn't want to get dropped, but also then if they like slow down a little bit, I would hit my brakes too much. And then it would be like this yo-yo, and that would be dangerous for everybody else. And having a little extra room sometimes is, especially the very beginning when you're starting, is so beneficial. If somebody behind you yells to get closer, just even in a race, sometimes it's a strategy, but it doesn't impact them. It's like you, as long as you're not dropping the wheel, so that they have to like sprint out. But in a race, you kind of want to do that sometimes. It's fine. And don't worry about the pressure of because John, you've seen this too, right? Some people will like pressure other people to be super close on drafting. And especially if they're hurting, don't fall into that trap. Like get that safety, that cushion. And then when they slow down, you can you almost like float up to them. If you know it's going to be surgy, there's a difference between a break and like kind of like a cordy thing that happens. As they slow down, you kind of roll up to them and then without pedaling, but you're not hitting the brakes. Pretty much this is what Pete said. The best part of like when Pete talked about crits is you hit the brakes the least of anyone in the whole peloton, you're winning. Yeah. Which is crazy to think about, because I would tap those things all the time and I'd always like feather them, and because you're scared, you don't want to crash, but having that little cushion is so key.
Yeah, and it's really hard to do too, right? Like it's just, especially it's kind of like a foreign thing. This is interesting. It's talking about drafting really quick. Something, a topic du jour going on right now, big time, is in triathlon. After Kona this past weekend, there's probably one of the biggest, it wasn't the leaders, they were off the front, which by the way, Nate, I don't know if you know this, but a bike course record over the weekend, sub 4 hours at Kona, 28.4 miles an hour.
What?
Sam Laidlow. 28.4th miles an hour.
How? Was it a special?
He did blow up on the run, though. Let's just say that.
Oh, shook the earth. Yeah. No, I mean the wind wasn't bad, but it also wasn't like a very favorable day. It wasn't like they caught an amazing tail, a switch with the tail. It blew not only him, but it blew the vast majority of the field up.
Because they don't want to let him go away.
Yeah, and it was just super impressive to see that bike effort. I think everyone was kind of wondering like, how in the world is this going to work out on the run? And it played out like logic would point to.
Mm-hmm.
But behind him, it was him, and then there was one other that was, another, like Magnus Ditlev was somewhere between 1.5 to 4 minutes behind him throughout the race. And then there was another that came up later on. But behind that, there was a group. They're all with Race Ranger, which is the new system that sits on the back of the bike, and it has a light on it. And if you enter the draft, that light changes colors, so then it informs you. And then you only have a certain amount of time that you can be there before you have to, just as the old rules always have been, make a pass.
And you have to pass, right? If you get in that.
Yes.
That's
and
so
here's
hard.
the deal. There was a line of riders all within 12 meters, because that's the point, all within 12 meters of each other, that had to have been half a mile long, quarter mile long. And it was some of the greatest triathletes in the world. They're all there pushing super hard. And at 12 meters, you absolutely get a benefit still. Like there is a benefit there. That's why they're riding together, or else they wouldn't be doing it, right? So if you were in the back and then you caught yourself in that situation, you'd have to ride against the best triathletes in the world, and you'd have to pass them. And it's like a quarter mile long, that line of riders. So like the amount of power you'd have to put out, imagine you're at the back of that field. The race official is there because there were tons of motos beside them the whole time looking for that. And the race official says, you either have to pass or you get a penalty. And if you have to make that move, that's minutes long of a very high VO2 effort that you're going to have to do.
I always wondered that, because I've heard that where you're in the back, if you get in the draft for the last person, the light turns on. Couldn't you just, if you pass the person in front of you but don't go into the next draft, you don't have to pass again? Because now they have that light. You think you would, like, as soon as I get a quarter inch of a wheel in front of the other person has to drop back, right?
Well, not technically. All of them, and you're totally right. Like, yes, that could happen. But the way that everyone is stacked up is they're stacked up so that light is constantly like in the trip zone, basically, right? So it's like, and if a person falls in between then you'd be dropping into the draft zone and you'd be back into the red. So you basically just have to, you're stuck. You've got to commit to going all the way up. And there were penalties that were handed out as a result of this, of course, because riders didn't make that pass because it would blow up your entire race. You have to do a 7-minute VO2 effort just to get by all these cyclists in the middle of that bike leg, and you're going to blow apart.
So if you tap your brakes, you screw everybody.
Yes.
Yeah.
And apparently there's a lot of talk where it's passive aggressive right now. It's not, nobody's name being named, but apparently that was absolutely happening, where riders were slowing down intentionally and then causing riders behind them to get those penalties. And then the penalty, I think it was 5 minutes per penalty. It's in my opinion, that's way too severe. But who am I to say I'm not a pro triathlete? But there's a big movement now where everyone they're trying to collect data on showing the fact that at 12 meters there's a significant benefit, and they want to push it back to 20 meters. But I am personally of the opinion, and I want to hear people's thoughts on this, I think the drafting should be totally allowed. I think that it should be there. Will it be safe? No. And it's going to force people to have to make decisions to either ride safe or adjust their equipment to be more safe. But I think it's crazy because it makes the sport a whole lot. What's that name?
Or ride dangerously. That's the decision that a lot of people would make to win.
That's right. But that decision is something that exists very commonly, across the board in other cycling disciplines, right? Like, I know that you could say road racing, you don't have extensions, but look at gravel. Gravel, you can't even see what you're riding on, and you're in a group. You don't know what's in front of you with that dust and everything else. So this risk situation is there, and triathlon's really unique in the sense that they're trying to like sanitize it of that, and I think they should get rid of it. I think it would make racing exciting.
Gosh. Jonathan is so wrong. Please comment.
No, I'm right. You're wrong.
Thank you. The solution for this is for the pro race, they should stagger, where it's 12 meters, but you have to be on the opposite side of the road, and be within 3 feet of the yellow dots or 3 feet of the line, because the roads are closed, right? So there's enough room.
They should be. That's for sure. Yeah.
To have it. Or else you're drafting a car. It should be a staggered race, because then it's going to be 24 meters, and then you're good. And then, when you pass, you could just, let's see.
There's some courses where that wouldn't work out. I'm thinking of courses like, I don't know if Boulder is still this way, but a lot of it is on like a bike path effectively. And in Europe, there's some really narrow roads, and it's twisty and turny. It'd be tricky.
racing on a bike path sounds hard, but
On a TT bike, no less.
yeah, okay. At least for Kona, they can do staggered because that's the one that's really big. But I mean, if it was drafting, my God, like age groupers too, Jonathan, or just pros?
No, I think open the can. Let it happen.
Everybody.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Everyone.
I think
So
you
when they
open it
come
up.
into T2, everyone's taking their shoes off in a pack. Like they're all like trying to undo their buckles. Have
It's
you seen
happening
people
already.
like swerve on the road?
It's happening already. Because then you see the age groupers, and the age groupers are not leaving 12 meters at all. Like the top age groupers they're running a team time trial as if they're Ineos. They're right on each other. They're rolling turns. So like, anybody that's listening to this that was racing in Kona, let us know. But I watched the broadcast and I saw it was just, when they showed age groupers, it was just, it was full on road racing. It was a full pack all together, no separation whatsoever.
That's the other thing that will happen is in the pro, just like gravel, they'll start to be teams where someone will sacrifice themselves on the bike leg or 3 people. And then someone just sits in there and then it's like, it's ITU. That's what it is. We have that, John. That's called ITU. And they can do that. Like,
this is long ITU, and it could be more exciting. I think it'd be more interesting. Then you have like tactics and gamesmanship and game theory in place that might not be there otherwise. And I think it makes
it's
it
a
more
race against yourself, John. It is.
That's called time trialing. That's
supposed
a whole
to be a time trial.
No, I think it should be open. I think the drafting should be there. So let me know if I'm wrong and why I'm wrong down below. But Alex, you're jumping into it headlong. You're not going to worry about drafting anymore. So
yeah, it'll be interesting. You'll have me back on next summer, and I'll share how it's going.
Yeah. One other question I have, Alex, before we get into the questions that we have from athletes.
I'm sorry. One other thing, Alex. You probably know this, but I say this for everyone else who's new to this too, is overlapping wheels. Sometimes there's a crosswind that's so big that you overlap wheels. So meaning that your front wheel is covering their rear wheel, like kind of like
slightly.
Slightly. And what would happen is if somebody turns quickly, like to dodge a pothole, you could crash. And in a road race at Chico, where there is a gravel section, which I don't know why they do this, they have like a mile-long gravel section on a road race. This is back when we rode like 19mm tires. And I was in my first road race, like actual USA cycling one. There's a line. The first person has their head down, going hard. They put their head up. They dodge a pothole really hard, swerves other people. The next person hits it. I then hit them and scorpion into the ground and get like 9 screws in my shoulder. It's a great way to.
And Alex is like, yeah, I'm not doing it anymore. Selling the bike.
I did a century ride years ago. It was in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and we were doing like, there's 2 lines of drafting, and so I was on the one right next to the on the outside of the road. And so when all of a sudden we were slowing down and I had nowhere to go and my wheel was starting to get caught up with the person in front of me, so I just bailed. I went right into the ditch, and it was a nice grassy ditch, and I had there was really no injuries, but I do vividly remember that. And so it's something I'm very conscious of staying off that back wheel enough that we're staying safe.
Mm-hmm.
And you can still be, if I finish my point here, but you can still be overlapped in there. You just have to pay a lot of attention. And the most important part is to look, if you're on the front, is to look ahead. And the best riders, John, they use hand signals and they point stuff out that's coming, because if it's an echelon, just because they don't hit it, somebody else could hit it. So what they're doing is, if there's a hole coming up on the right, they're pointing at the ground on the right, telling everyone there's a hole, and everyone can talk about that. If you ever needs to nudge over, the hand signal that I see people do is they put their hand behind their back and kind of like flap it to the left or right to be like, come this way, come that way. And that usually to me means the whole peloton has to move. There's a car. And when you ride with an experienced rider who knows those, like who does that and communicates, it feels so much better. Everyone's safer. John, do you have any other like tips on that?
Yeah. And I want to point out some context first, because I don't want people to think that Nate is like mansplaining or something here.
It's just for everybody.
Nate used to be a triathlete, And so Nate is like relating with empathy over to the situation of Alex going into drafting and going into everything else. And this is for everybody.
And it's not just for Alex, because Alex brought up, it hit me in my brain about this, but we have 50 million listens. New people are coming into the sport every single time. And a lot of times I think, oh, they probably listened to all 500 episodes. I talked about this in episode 25. Like,
yeah.
And I could say it again.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, for long listeners, I'm like, well, what is that? I don't know what that is. And then John explains it, so it's part of the episode, right? And it sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's what I was kind of like. It's not just for Alex. I don't want to sound like I'm mansplaining. Alex, here's how you draft. And,
I did not get mansplaining vibes from you, Nate, so you're
cool.
good.
Yeah, it's just for the whole audience of everyone listening. And even people have been running for a long time, getting better at pointing things out. Like if you get that reminder and next time you go out there and you really think about it, like you have responsibility when you're on top and you're on the front to look ahead and really pay attention. Look for those like cars that are pulling up to a stop sign and the person's looking the other way, not towards you, right? And
so scary.
Putting your hand, I always do it's like the downward L where you put your hand straight down. That means everyone slow down. And just doing that if something dangerous is coming up, like a car coming to a stop sign. The cars who come by you to pass you and then to take a right turn. That's the
most common one.
That's the one that's really,
That's how I got hit in Hawaii. So yeah, it's definitely a common one. You know, there's a sign or an indicator that cyclists do now more often than they used to, which you'll see when they're riding, they'll flare their elbows out once or twice. Twice typically means that they're going to get out of the saddle or get back down into the saddle. Once typically means that there's something coming up, a bump that's coming up, and they're just letting you know about it. And that's been more common, I've noticed, over the past 3 years, it's become really common. Like this year in SBT, riding with different groups, saw it everywhere. 4 years ago, I don't think I ever saw that sort of move. It was really rare. So, and you'll see it when you're watching the tour, everything else, you'll notice guys do that. They just flick their elbows up twice and they're going to get in or out of the saddle. And then, because that's another thing when I think a lot of us don't realize when we get out of the saddle, we just think, oh, I'm getting out of the saddle. But when I'm behind myself and I do that, my wheel juts back like 6 inches when I get out of the saddle or in the saddle sometimes. So then it's like, if I'm following close, boom, that's like all it takes is me getting in and out of the saddle ahead without announcing that to somebody. And then we have a silly crash that just didn't need to happen.
You just brought something in my mind. There was a road cycling team and they were like, was it Brocken Road or something? Or was that what it is?
They're a SoCal team. Really strong.
It was a pro team, and they were like in the
rock racing,
racing.
Look, the wild looking kits,
the wild rock racing. And I rode with a guy who worked for them, and we were climbing up Geiger, and I was like, I'm gonna show this guy how strong I am, and I would get in and out of the saddle, and he was like, "Well, what are you doing? When you get out of the saddle, you're throwing your bike back." He's like, "You can get out of the saddle without throwing your bike back," and he's like, "You're being dangerous." And I was going as hard as I could. So this is like a classic climb that we have, right? So it's like a time trial climb. And I was,
you're like, dude, I'm just trying to not die.
But he was on the edge, right? So he wanted to get really close. But at the same time, I'm like throwing the bike back. And that enlightened me because I never realized how much, especially as a taller rider, you can really push that bike back. And yeah, so that's another thing. I bet a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, smooth in and out of the saddle. Indoor training is a great test for it, especially like on rollers. People always think that the problem with rollers is that you fall off the sides. It's not. You fall off the front probably 80 or 90% of the time, the front or back, usually the front. And it's because you get in and out of the saddle and your bike wants to go forward or back. So it's a really good training thing for it.
It's that forward lean. When I would get out and I like really lean forward, when you're leaning forward, you're kind of pushing your bike back. It's almost like you're kind of kicking it back. Hopefully that improves.
So while we're on this, really quick, just some road racing talk. We asked for people to go on and to go everything. I haven't put the poll up. I need to put the poll up on the forum. I'm going to do that right after this for the race. But I figured out I was really uninformed. Somebody reached out from a website. I can't remember the name of the website right now, but they reached out and they're an expert on like all these big Gran Fondo, like basically amateur big road races in the world. And he let me know that Flanders and Roubaix, they're not scored. They're not like, there's nothing competitive necessarily about them. Like you start and then you just ride. There's no stakes, Nate.
John's
like,
saying there's no point.
I'm not going to, yes, there's no point.
My name needs to be on a leaderboard.
Well, I want to be clear. I'm not going to be winning anything, but you need some stakes in order for it to be interesting, right? Like,
yeah, and it's fun to show all the people who like can compare themselves to you and beat you.
Yeah.
Which is always fun.
Yes.
Yes.
And everyone's like, oh, I'm way faster than Jonathan.
Yeah.
That makes them feel good.
Honestly, it's
So,
the opposite. Usually people don't realize how fast you are, which is fun, especially on mountain biking. It's insane.
Yeah. So I've got some other events, and I'm thinking, Nate, maybe a stage race, an amateur stage race in Europe in May or June.
Ooh, European
like-
racing. That would be so different for you.
Right? Like a Euro road stage race would be something totally foreign for me. Something I think it'd be
You would
pretty
learn
cool.
a lot.
So, oh, yeah. And I'm thinking there's some, I think, in Austria that are in the Alps too. So like that would be, I would have to do a lot of change. Alex, I'm going to be hitting you up, and that kind of dovetails into the questions that we have today. Because if I'm going to be in the mountains of Austria, I think that I need to make sure that my body composition is optimized. Probably a ton of Euros that are just going to lay the wood to me up those climbs and stuff. So maybe I'll get them on the descents. But anyways, I'm thinking that's the direction we're going to lean. I got some great suggestions from this gentleman that reached out, and we're going to put them out there, and then we'll see what people think, and it'll be pretty cool. But that's going to be something totally different. Yeah. But I want to compete. Yeah. I'm not saying I'm going to win. I want to compete. If I'm competing for like the final third or whatever in the group, that's fine. I just want to be racing and competing. And like, because then that way I can actually try things, fail, learn, and then that way we can get some good learnings on the podcast, you know?
You know what I haven't heard about too is I've heard about pro racing in Europe and how that's way different than pro racing in the US, but I don't know what amateur racing in Europe compared to amateur racing in the US, because I don't think that happens very often. And I wonder what the differences are in strategy and tactics and even like etiquette.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's one of our employees, Evan, he lives in Spain. Super fast. He's done a handful of races like this, like amateur ones. And I know that some of the top guys are like 6 watts per kilo practically. I'm not going to be up there with the Contadors and such. I'm going to be further back. But at the same time, I think it could be really interesting. So I'm stoked for it. It's going to be pretty fun. But totally out of my wheelhouse doing a road stage race. I haven't done a road stage race since Valley of the Sun, Nate, when we did it together. What was that, 2019 or 2020? It was 2020, right just before everything went sideways with the pandemic. That's going to be it's a really long time. I've done road racing, of course, since then, but no road stage races, and never done one in Europe in the Alps. So there's going to be a lot of change that needs to happen. With that in mind, let's get into these questions. And I think that I want to go into Kiara's question first, Alex, because it relates to what we were just talking about. Mm-hmm. So Kiara says, and Kiara submitted these questions, by the way, at trainerroad.com/podcast. You can submit your questions there. We will come through them, find ones that we feel like would make for good podcast content and educational, and we'll answer them. Kiara says, I've recently been paying closer attention to my macros, but not striving to hit any targets yet. It's been illuminating as I'm not the one, as she says, I'm not the one in our friend group that eats light, but I am totally undernourishing myself. That's funny, the social disconnect that you have, right? Like you think that I'm the one that eats more out of this group, but when you start to look at it, it's different. Kiara says, as a female endurance athlete, it seems like I should be taking in 1.8 grams per kilogram for protein, 8 grams per kilogram for carbs, and 1.5 grams per kilogram for fat. But my numbers, even when I am not eating light, are typically around 1 gram per kilogram of protein, 4 grams per kilogram of carbs, and 1 gram per kilogram of fat. I want to fix this and nourish better, but life is so busy, and I feel like I'll need to be super intentional about getting whole foods and preparing them to hit my goals. I get constant ads for Factor meals, but I've heard those are just expensive TV dinners. I've never tried them. Nate, have you ever tried them?
No, I get the ads, though.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Are they expensive TV dinners?
I mean, they're not cheap, but honestly, I thought they tasted really good. I was actually really impressed. Oh. I mean, I like the chicken breast and the one. I was like, actually, this is legit. This was good. Protein's pretty decent. I want to say the ones that I got were about 30 grams per meal. The vegetables were not like mushy. They were actually really. I mean, and it was like 2 minutes in the microwave, and I had like a nice balance.
Sold me.
Yeah, I mean, it was worth trying. I don't really need them for me because I work from home. It's easy for me to like put together meals, and I eat a lot of like leftovers from the night before, or can put together some things really quickly for myself. But I did try them just because I was curious, and I thought they were decent.
Cool. That's really good. Kiara mentions, are there any services you recommend for this? If not, then any easy meal recommendations I could put in a rotation? And then finally, if I can only hit these goals 2 to 3 days per week, is it even worth doing? Or does it need to be an all or nothing type of thing to see the benefit? That's a really good question that I haven't, I'm very much either or. It's like I'm either full on or not. And I haven't thought about this doing it incrementally. Alex, where do you want to start with this? Do you want to start with, I guess, that last question first?
I want to start with the last question first because I feel
Yeah.
like that one is really key. Because I see so many athletes with this all or nothing mindset, and I think that can be really harmful. I think we need to look at it as like, okay, on days that it's really easy for you to get in good quality nutrition, let's take advantage of that. And then on the days where it's a little more challenging, let's figure out how to make the best of those situations, but not like have it completely derail you mentally in thinking like, oh, I totally like screwed up my whole week because of just these 2 meals that I didn't hit my protein targets, for example. Like I feel like it's the really small little things that you can do consistently over time that are going to make the bigger difference versus then trying to revamp everything all at once and only being able to do that every once in a while.
So in this case, it's probably worth it to, if you can have 2 or 3 days a week, and that's like what your life for one reason or another allows, that you let that be the case and you don't feel like it's a failure. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think anything that you can do to make improvements in your nutrition is worth doing. And I think we get in this like mindset of like perfection where we have to eat perfectly all the time. And that's just not the case. That's not realistic. Like, let's be realistic about how we're going to eat and just go from there. So looking at like what she said with where she's typically eating, like the one, when she said she's eating 1 gram per kilogram protein, 4 grams per kilogram carbs, and 1 gram kilogram per fat, I would honestly, looking at that, I'd say start with the protein. I'd say work on trying to get yourself up to 1.8. You don't have to do it overnight, but what gradually can you add into your morning or your midday or your evening or even just at snacks to start incorporating more protein to get yourself up to where you need to. Like the fat where you're at, I think that's fine. Usually 1 gram per kilogram I think is adequate. And with the carbs, she can keep it where it's at, and then maybe just look at her intra-workout fueling and just increase the carbs that you're taking there. That might be a really easy spot for you to incorporate more carbs. You're going to have better performance in your workouts, and then hone in on that protein because that's really going to help with recovery.
That's a really good point on like fueling during the workout and checking that box first, and then seeing how it impacts. Sorry, Nate, you were going to say something. I overlapped.
I was going to make a joke. But anyway.
Dang it. Sorry if I ruined it.
No, the joke's not funny anymore. But I was going to say, but I'll still say it. Now it's really not funny. Alex was talking about how we don't need to eat perfectly and stuff. And I was going to be like, we need to publish this. It's Halloween, before Halloween, so we could all eat candy. So Alex has permission. But it's not even funny when I say it now. It's not even funny in my head anymore. But I do have another point is that, so for Kiara, I think that's how we say it.
Mm-hmm.
If she were 120-pound woman, 54 kilograms, the difference between these two numbers, right now it's saying she's eating 1,800 calories, which is for a training athlete, probably way too low. But the other one is 2,800, 2,845 calories, which that's pretty high. Like I think you'd have to train a lot to be able to have close to 3,000 calories. Like I'm trying to gain weight now, and 3,000, 3,200 calories is like kind of what I'm not training like 8 hours on the bike and stuff, but still and I'm 215 pound guy. Alex, what do you think about that for like how much caloric intake someone should take?
Yeah, that's where I was like, I'm not sure how much she's training, so it's hard for me to know. But I was like, I feel like the targets that she felt like she should be taking might have been a little high. That's where I was like, 1 gram per kilogram fat would probably be more accurate, and then it would really depend on how much training she's doing in terms of carbs. But if she's a really high volume training athlete, then 8 grams per kilogram might be accurate, but that'd also be it could just be she's
Mhm.
underfueling her workouts a little bit too, and then we could fill in some gaps there.
So the important part would be hitting the 1 gram per kilogram of fat, hitting the protein intake of 1.8, and then the carbs then adjust based on how much she's training.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
and
she could look
I
at
think
timing too with carbs too.
what timing do you think how should she look at timing?
Well, she could take in more carbs around that workout and then taper them a little bit later on in the day if she's looking for body composition goals, or if she's really struggling with energy levels, then we might just need to make sure that she's just getting better consistent carb intake day after day.
So for body composition, then if you're going to have so many carbs throughout the day, it'd be better to front load them before the workout rather than, and immediately after, I guess, than
Mm-hmm.
have all of them at 9 p.m. at night and then don't eat
Yeah.
anything for the hours leading up to your workout.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we see that from a lot of athletes who just underfuel during the day, and then they kind of have a little bit of a binge session in the evening because they're so hungry. And that puts a lot of stress on your body to try and sleep and digest all of that food. So I find we see a lot of success with our athletes when we can front load nutrition earlier on.
Have you ever had that? I as I'm training more right now too on the bike, and I've gone in this pattern. I used to be such a good eater, but I've gone in this pattern where I get on at work and I don't eat anything, and then I try to eat everything at once, or I don't get enough calories in.
Mhm.
The difference between if I really hit breakfast, like lunch, and a snack before I train, it's like my power meter's broken. And I go, oh, this thing can't, I like zero it a few times. Like, this thing can't be right. It's reading way too high because the feel is so much easier when you eat so much more. And again, it's the same amount of calories throughout the day. I just kind of have to stuff them in before. And it doesn't change your body composition too. If you're having the same amount of, it doesn't change your weight too if you're having the same amount of calories throughout the day. You just train better.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would beg to differ. If from some of our athletes who the main thing that we shift is not necessarily calorie consumption, but just timing of things. They're taking more nutrition earlier in the day, and we're rearranging the macronutrient balance a little bit more. Usually they're a little low on protein, maybe a little too high in fat. We see the body composition improve greatly. And because here's the other thing, when you're fueling better, your workouts feel better, and then also your energy levels just generally in the day are better. So you have the energy to go work on that yard work project that you had, or you're playing with your kids more, or you want to go for a walk with them. You're just more productive throughout the day, and that burns energy in itself too.
That's another key sign of you're doing too much, either too much training volume or not eating enough, because if you're not eating enough, you're not be able to recover. But after those rides, you are done for the day. And I think there's a difference between that huge weekend ride that you do, which you're smashing yourself, but those weekday interval rides when you do them, and then you're like, I have to. We're parents, so you can't do this, but you know what I mean. When you have the opportunity, you're like, I'm going to be on my phone for 3 hours now because I am so trashed from that ride. That's a good sign that your body can't recover from it. And I think the first place to look is nutrition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. I think people associate feeling trashed as a good thing, oh, I got a workout. But I see it as, ooh, we got to fuel you more. Because if you do a really hard workout and you feel still $1 million afterwards, that's such a confidence booster. And I'm like, yeah, that's what we want. You want to feel good afterwards. You don't want to feel like you need to take a nap.
I want to go deeper into that because I have been in that so many times. I don't know if you, John, too, is that I will keep pushing myself until I feel like I'm going to die. And then looking back with our red light, green light stuff where we have the yellow and red days, I would trigger so many yellow days, and then I would have to take time off, and then it would take a week off because I would get sick. And that would be my pattern over and over and over again. And I just triggered a yellow day the other day, and I actually skipped it. I'm so proud of myself.
I was just going to say, I've made a big growth step on Friday. I did my training and met up with a friend thereafter, and we rode some awesome trails. It turned the day, which was probably going to be yellow the next day anyway, and ended up turning it because I'm getting back into training. So red light, green light's pacing me through it. But it gave me a red day because I did too much, and I respected it. I missed out on a Saturday that I was planning on doing this great long ride. I had this whole plan, and I skipped it because I was like, you know what? I don't want to get into a spot where I'm making bad choices. And I feel great this week as a result.
The real proof is when you look back at your history, because, John and I have been doing this on TrainerRoad we just looked at it. I have rides from like 2011. And we have it back, right? So I can look back there and I can just remember all the times I trashed myself over and over and over again, having that same time of like, this is the day I have to ride. So I'm going to ride so much. And then I pay for it later on.
Yeah.
And I just
it's a good plug.
Yeah.
It's a good plug for TrainerRoad. Go sign up for TrainerRoad and then you'll sync everything. You can look back in your training history and you can see this very thing. So go do it. That in and of itself is worth you having, because it's $20 a month. And then like for you to have an advisor that's telling you, even if you didn't follow the training plans, just somebody that's saying, hey, today you should be taking it easy or you should skip. Even that alone is worth it. So go to TrainerRoad and give it a shot.
The real beneficial time too is like with John and I too, we're coming back. So we know how much we've done before. And so you have something and you feel sick or you feel a little tired, but you're like, I've done this so many times. Like this much volume.
I trained 20 hours a week once. So that means that's what I should do right now.
I mean, I'm just like, I used to do 6, 7. So I'm like, why can't I do this, every other hard day? Like, and even though I weight trained the day before, I'm like, that's the cool part too, is it's factoring my weight training now. And that is it's acknowledging in my brain how much it does actually take. It makes you tired. Even upper body stuff, it's the neuromuscular fatigue. Alex, you ever experience this too with weight training, where your just brain gets tired after big efforts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm still working on my strength training because I get really easily distracted, and so it takes me forever to get my workout done.
It's Netflix.
But yeah, I just like get sucked into the show, or like my phone goes off, and I need to like honestly go on like do not disturb so I can actually get the workout done in a decent amount of time.
Yeah. This is bringing up, Kiara, I'm going to hijack this for myself. I apologize. Hopefully something relatable can come from it. The biggest thing, so remember, Nate, over the past year to 2 years, really, I guess 3 years, 4 years maybe, the narrative for me for training has been like, I don't respond to training like I used to anymore. Now, with newborns, it was absolutely like a sleep thing, but now I'm to the point where my sleep is strong and solid. But I still just I don't seem to respond to training like I used to. Like you could give me the same training and I just get less from it. Like less juice comes out, but you squeeze the lemon the same. I just get less juice.
Old?
Yes. Yes.
Ouch.
Yes, this is the truth. 37 now, and it's not the same as when I was 27, believe it or not. But I will say this. This year, I've done macros before and looked at all that, and I totally have like the all or nothing perspective like you were talking about before, Alex. And then like I mess up on my macros, I'm like, oh, well, geez, okay, in that case, I better eat an entire tub of cookie dough because that's just what I need to have. And I have this complicated, very volatile relationship with food, and it's hard. With all of that said, there are times when I'm measuring everything and I'm going through and I can do that. That makes me a bit neurotic, adds a lot of stress to my life and makes things really tough. But when I'm doing that, yes, I get better at everything else. But measuring that and going through all that stress is almost like more work than it's worth for me. Mm-hmm. But here's like the hack, quote, so to speak. And it's not a hack. It's just like straight across numbers. But the thing that I found that helps me above all else, and this part is easy for me to measure, is protein. And we talked about this, I think it was with Dr. Pfaffenbach about the fact that like there's this assumption that like taking in like over 2 grams per kilogram is like excessive and you don't want to do that. I've been experimenting with up to like 2.5 grams per kilogram. I just get better. It's like when I'm taking in more protein and finding different ways to bring it in, I just get better, even better with my training. And it's like, it's something I've spoken to high level athletes about, and they've been trying it and they see the same thing where it's like where they used to see diminishing returns or plateaus. It's just taking in more, finding ways to take it in. It isn't just like bad, like they aren't just checking. It's trying to prioritize good sources of protein, I should say. Like
it is
whey
hard
protein
to do that though. Like it does take a lot of thought. Like I'm kind of on the same boat as you. I'm trying to like increase my protein intake. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to be on top of this throughout the day or I don't get even close to what my target is. Yeah, your protein shake.
Whey protein.
Yeah, I had that's at breakfast I have that. I mean, my breakfast is like 53 grams of protein just so I can get like a really good head start.
Alex, that's amazing.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you
Yeah.
tell everyone what that is? Because they're going to want to hear it.
Well,
Yeah.
I do half bagel with like 3-4 ounces of smoked salmon on there. I love smoked salmon so much. It's like one of my favorites, and it's a nice lean protein. The omega-3s are good for like reducing inflammation and like so many good things that omega-3s do. And then I'll do a protein shake, which is around 33. I'll do a cup of Fairlife chocolate milk with ice and a scoop of, I really like Thorne's chocolate whey protein isolate. And when you blend it together, and those that are listening that have done this before, because I've recommended it on Instagram, it tastes legit like a chocolate Wendy's Frosty. It's so good. I know it sounds weird at breakfast, but it's for me when it's 2 minutes. I can whip it up, while like I've got holding a baby on my hip, and I can get myself something in the morning. But yeah, that between the smoked salmon and the protein shake, it's about 50 to 55 grams.
Wow.
That's awesome.
2 things you mentioned there. Chocolate Wendy's Frosty. It's like this for Euros. It's like a milkshake, but different. But it's just like kind of like a really thick chocolate.
Yeah, it's like a thick chocolate milkshake that's, if you've had one, you just know it's very good. It's very, very tasty. And this protein shake tastes just like it.
Yum. And then in the US, we have this great milk called Fairlife that is lactose.
It's a higher protein.
It's 50%. It's 50% more protein than regular milk, and it tastes exactly the same. And then the other one you can get is Fairlife protein shakes. They have like you can get them in airports too. That's a good hack. Always
or
grab
like
them in
Core
airports.
Power would be another one. I'd say it's pretty comparable. I think it's the same company. Very just easy, nice quality protein that you can get in. So yeah, that's what I do at breakfast, and then lunch. I'll usually try to, I really like Caesar salads, so I always have a rotisserie chicken that I've pulled meat off, and I'll throw that on a salad, and then I might have some other like main entree to go with it that might have some protein in there. I like
both of these things.
salads.
1 second, Alex.
Yeah.
This is the big thing I'm recognizing, like a consistency between these two, Nate. It's like easy.
So
it's
easy.
not just that
if I can press the easy button on it, I'm doing it. Like baked salad
if you
kits.
can't press the easy button, you're not going to do it. Like at least that's in my life. At least like if it's not easy, it's probably going to be the first thing to go, right? Because you have other things that are going to take higher priority.
Yeah, and like sometimes I'll cook up burgers for our family, and I'll do like a half a burger, but then I'll do like the chicken Caesar salad on the side, so it's just a little bit leaner. And then I'll add in some sort of carb. That's easy for me to add, but I always like look for the protein and the veggie first, because that's where I usually struggle.
The Fairlife shakes, there's a 42 gram one, for the Core Power stuff. That one tastes so good. And my son is just about to turn 11, and he's actually on the smaller side. And I can't believe I haven't mentioned this after like 500 episodes, but I'm a tall guy. I'm 6'6". And
wow, really? You never mentioned this.
Sorry, I had to. But he's in like kind of the lower range of height, and he's not a big eater. And looking at research and stuff, it said that like 40% of height expression is due to protein intake when you're young, which that just blew my mind. But now with those protein shakes, he drinks them like he will literally at 62 pounds drink 2 of those shakes a day. And I'm like,
that's awesome.
Whoa. And he's not having digestive issues, and he loves it. And I was starting to see the scale go up, and he actually makes him, it seems like it makes him hungrier. I don't know, but I don't know if it's he's growing more, so he's hungrier with that. I don't know if that's all just made up in my mind, but this for parents though, if your kids aren't getting enough protein, the things just taste like milkshakes. Where if I make a regular whey protein shake, my kids are like, ew, this tastes funny. But I guess now we have Frosties too, so I should just make it and tell them it's a Frosty. Put it in the Wendy's cup.
So good. Yeah. Well, you want to know the other thing that I started doing since I started training? I started Creatine, and I am actually like really loving it. I think it's great.
This is another thing that I need to. In fact, I'm going to put it in Amazon on my cart right now and get some, because it's another thing, and I haven't asked their permission, so I don't want to say who it is. And it's not who you think it is, everybody. Everybody probably thinks it's Keegan, and it's not Keegan. But there is like a pro cyclist that I spoke with, and they mentioned the fact that since taking in creatine, like it's an entirely different world for them. Like it was, I think that a lot of us, for pro cyclists in particular, they get to the point where they've trained so much and plateaus are like normal experiences for them because they're really pushing everything up to the limits. And this was a marked big change for them, was starting to take creatine there. And it wasn't stopping them from climbing better. Instead, it's just better performance, ability to punch and repeat, ability to train more consistently, all that stuff.
There's a fear of weight gain just because of that little bit of water retention. But if you don't do the loading phase, you just do that maintenance phase of like 3 to 5 grams a day, I think there's not as much of an influx of water retention. And honestly, I think the benefits outweigh that little bit of water retention. Because you just like there's more strength in your muscles. So you have a little bit better power when you need it. When you need it,
yeah, it's stored right there. The other thing that
mental clarity to the moms out there that kind of like my mind's like really a big struggle right now. I'm just like, I need as much help as I can get, and there's actually really strong research with like cognitive mental health and memory. And
concussions too.
Yes.
Yeah. We overlook, we always underestimate, or we don't really think about what happens to our body when we train for 1 hour. If you lose a liter of fluid in 1 hour, that weighs a lot. And in our minds, we're like, no, like because I took creatine, I'm weighing 3 extra pounds. And because I'm weighing 3 extra pounds, that's going to make me a terrible climber, take me from what I was to being a terrible climber. Yeah. Meanwhile, you're going to lose more weight than that in just the first hour. Like everybody is fluctuating. And what actually decides if you're going to be a better climber when it counts is the energy that you have in your muscles, the ability to perform later on in that race. That's what's really going to make the big difference. So, I think it's I need to add it into my regimen for sure. One thing really quick, I need the audience's help. Can you help me find protein powder that doesn't mess up your stomach, that isn't pea protein? Pea protein, like I feel like it's.
Do you need a plant-based one?
Yeah, well, I guess I don't know what the deal is. Even whey isolates, everything else. Nate, the other one that you recommended the other day, I can't remember the brand.
On Nutrition, Gold Whey Standard.
Yeah, and they have like their isolate one that's supposed to be really good. Or no, hydrolyzed, I believe it is the one that you recommended.
I don't remember, but didn't that mess you up?
Yeah, still messes up my gut. I can't find a protein powder that doesn't mess up my gut. So if anybody has any suggestions. Yeah, gas.
Is it horrible smelling?
The gas?
Yeah.
I mean, no, I don't think so.
Okay,
no.
Because what could happen, I know this is like, tell me more, gas, John.
Wondering where you're going.
If you, like a sign of taking in too much protein is you will have this rotten egg gas
smell. No, it's not that.
And
just discomfort.
If I found too, as I've increased my protein.
Are you sure it's the protein? That's my question.
No, I mean, not entirely sure because my life isn't a scientific experiment. However, if I do look, I'm pretty consistent with the things that I eat.
Yeah.
Like on a weekly schedule, I kind of have a rotation that we follow through with. And the one thing that stands out as change is protein powder. And that's when I take it, that's when the gut stress happens. It's almost like I can skate through if I'm not doing demanding training as well. Like, if not putting my gut in a more sensitive spot, then because if you're fueling it 90 grams of carbs per hour and you're doing something that's like a bigger, longer day, like no matter who you are, that's like you're putting your gut through something pretty tough. And when I take it, I definitely have gut distress then thereafter.
What about do you find any common denominators in terms of like additives, like any artificial sweeteners or like, I'm thinking of like fiber. Some of those products will have like fiber added, like the inulin or chicory root extract. Some of those can be really gas producing too. So just keep an eye on those ingredients too.
Good tip. Yeah. So if anybody knows, ones I've tried, they're on their hydrolyzed whey isolate. I've tried Momentous. I've tried, I think Thorn. No, I haven't tried Thorn. I tried
Thorn does have a plant-based one. Theirs has a little bit of stevia in the whey protein isolate. I'm not sure about the plant-based one off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to ask to have like my cake and eat it too here, but I'd really like to have it be whey because from what I've seen in research, like whey protein is such a high quality protein
it's great.
Yeah. John, as I've increased my protein intake over the years, like I've had the same kind of experience, but it just kind of goes away if you push through
just
it.
get used to it.
Yeah, and your body like improves. Another pro tip for creatine, a problem that I have is that if I don't have a shake that day, I don't put the powder in and then I lose that day, right? And I can be inconsistent. And what I've recently done is I've gotten the creatine pills. They're like 1.1 gram per pill, so you have to take a few pills at once. But then I put them in a little sandwich baggie, open next to my sink at night. For some reason, when I put the bottle there, my ADHD brain doesn't want to untwist the bottle and pour them out. But when I see there's just some like pills in an open plastic bag so it doesn't get wet, but it's, it's in the right spot, I can just reach in, take 4 pills, get like 5-6 grams of creatine and take that in. And I notice a big difference in how I look. I just look more full and my muscles look better. And then for that protein thing, you talk about that 2.2 is like whatever the most or when you look at the studies though, the data has what's called error bars on it. So there's this line, there's like, it'll say, here's the where the result is the median. I think it's the median, but then the error bars is the like the variance of the data. So if it's a bigger error bar, some people responded better. They responded better with more protein, and other people responded better with less. So that 2.2 is more of a standard range. And if you look at actual results, there's some people that are like, I remember seeing this on another podcast, but there's like a person who like did the best on 3, and they're like, who's that person? But they kind of give you an average at the end. So I love that idea that you are experimenting a little bit, and if you feel better with it and your body composition's good and your training's good, I would just keep doing it. But I think Alex, the main one,
and I think keep in mind, like listening to this, I don't think everyone should go out and like go straight to 2.5.
12?
I think.
Yeah.
I think that you need to also be realistic in what's like achievable for you to get in. Even if you can easily get 1.8, great, but like 2 just feels like really difficult for you, then stick with 1.8. Like that's a great protein range to be in.
And what I'm talking about too are like bodybuilding muscle mass things that people are doing. If this was a podcast about being the best bodybuilder you could be, Alex might be like, yeah, push that up a little bit higher. But because we're cyclists, she's like, let's get 1.8 and maybe let's focus on the carbs, right? For the same amount of calories in the day, because that's going to make your performance better. I don't know. I'm putting words in Alex's mouth, but that's, I agree with you.
Some athletes, I'm like just trying to get them to eat in general. Like when I like start with me and they're like eating like 800 calories a day. I'm like, okay, we got some work to do. So, I mean, everyone's a little bit different, which I think is the hard thing about us sitting here talking about it is because, especially when we talk about body composition too, it's like everyone's here looking for like that one little secret answer that's going to help them lose weight. But it's like, you really have to look at it from an individual standpoint in order for us to truly find what's going to work for you.
Alex, this is a question, and please, you don't answer it if you don't have to, but do you have thoughts on like Ozempic, trizipatide, peptides, for like GLP-1s to lose weight?
Yeah, I have yet to find an athlete that can successfully do it on something like Ozempic. Like if anyone's out there that's listening that's on it and feeling great in their training, let us know. But I have yet to find anyone that's able to be on a GLP-1 and also successfully like train for something. Because it cuts your hunger down so much that you're essentially forcing yourself to be underfueled. It's hard to do.
I have this. We had a whole podcast about it, and I had the same like thought that you did, is that this would be a detriment to anyone who's really training. If you're obese, amazing. But I've come to think that like, in looking at some research and stuff, I guess not research, probably more anecdote, but like microdosing it. So a little enough to get some of the benefits of blood sugar response and lower inflammation, but without causing a big decrease in appetite or stomach issues. And the trizipatide and retatrutide, I think, are better with the stomach issues as you get forward, so you can still eat a lot. I don't know. That's my I predict things on this podcast. So in 4 or 5 years,
We shall see. We shall see.
Yeah. that'll
I
be
think
a
it's-
trend for everybody, is to do a really low dose GLP-1.
My opinion is, Nate, and perhaps this is overstepping a bit, but my opinion is it's being used, whether it's in that fashion or whether they're using compounded peptides, that it's absolutely being used in pro racing. It's not illegal, and we have to be clear with that. Like, these can be expensive, they can pose risks, they can do all of those things. But number one, they are not illegal. Number two, most of them are not on the banned substance list either. So,
But needles are illegal for pros.
needles are,
But
but
they
there's a
can't-
lot of different
yeah.
ways that they can get around this. Of
They
course, there's
they
also, they can just stick themselves with needles and no one will know too.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. So, but my opinion is it's absolutely being used. And I would not be surprised if we find out in the future that indeed, like, it has been used, and we'll have to see. But yeah, I can see it's there. It is, from what you said, Alex, anecdotally from the athletes that I've heard from individually that are taking it in training, because if you just trust the narratives, it's disastrous for it and it's absolutely terrible. I've spoken to some athletes that say, no, it's really great. I'm still training. And one athlete actually just reached out the other day. They saw the video that we did on it on YouTube, and then they reached out on my personal Instagram and they said, it's been life-changing for me, because I used to have a situation with food where I never once felt good about myself for food because I was constantly craving food all day. And then I would go into these binge purge sessions, and they're like, and now I take this and that desire is gone and the guilt is totally gone, and I'm enjoying food more than I ever have. And they're like, I'm eating less, but I'm also eating more than I would on some days because I was so volatile before. So for them, it like normalized.
Yeah.
So I think it's important.
Yeah. And again, like,
Yeah.
there's always those situations where it makes sense. And then there's others where it's like, this is not a good option.
I don't remember if I mentioned this already, but I had a friend who, unfortunately, she was addicted to cocaine. She took it, stopped.
Cocaine. Like the habit was gone.
Yep, just gone.
Yeah,
she's like,
that's been shown in research too, where they've
Yeah.
taken addicts and they've given them these drugs and
Yes.
this appetite suppressant. I don't know what it is, if that's what it's tied to or something else.
I think it's some kind of dopamine reward system. Yeah, but the addictive things like phone, eating, drugs, cocaine, smoking, even cessation. And there's the wild thing too is there are other peptides that make you hungry. So what I think that are happening, and they're the ones that make you hungry, some of them are growth hormone, help release growth hormone. So people are doing that one, and like they do semaglutide or tirzepatide and something like tesamorelin. So they get hungry and they get better fat burning, insulin response, and lower inflammation. And there's other ones for recovery.
I kind of want to do a whole podcast where we go into the theoretical upsides and downsides of a lot of the different common peptides, Nate. I think it'd be really interesting to discuss. So we're out of time.
Okay, sorry.
We need to let Alex head off here. Alex, thanks a bunch. Appreciate this. Happy Halloween to everybody listening to this. If you want to have great suggestions on what you should do with your nutrition, have guidance and a whole spectrum of different services, you can go to Alex Larson Nutrition. Go check it out. She's also, in this case, an athlete like you, a TrainerRoad athlete, which is pretty darn great.
Yes, gosh, I've been telling you guys for 2 years now. I'm like, I will get on TrainerRoad, and then finally now I'm ready. I'm so excited. I mean, there's like this whole new season of life now that we're like done having kids. So I'm excited to see where the next couple of years go for me athletically.
It'll be great. So you can trust that Alex understands the things, because she trains a lot of athletes like this. So go check that out. And again, if you want the training plan that you need to get faster, you want to be told exactly what you need to do to get faster, go to TrainerRoad.com. Sign up for it. It's AI-based cycling coaching. It'll make you faster. We'll talk to you all next week. Thanks, everybody. Take care.